Hello and welcome back to the all new, all different #1 comics podcast. We are here today with a very special creator interview. And before I announce their name, I love doing this. So I'm going to hit you guys with some credits first. Of course, we have Gatsby. We have DC Pride 2023 with a spirit story. A spirit world story. We have Made in Korea, which I talked to you off air for a second, but we'll definitely get into that for a moment. Virtually Yours, Skip to the End, Before Houdini, After Houdini. We've got Marvel Voices, Spider-Verse with a Silk story, Southern Dog, Scanned, Marvel Voices Identity with a Mantis story, Pulp, and of course the upcoming 5-part series What If Venom, with part 1 releasing on February 28th. And that is Jeremy Holt, everyone. Jeremy, hey, how the heck are you? So good to have you here.
I'm well, Dan. Thanks for having me. That's quite the list you rattled off. I forget how much I've done. I mean, a lot of that was small press publishers. So, like, I'm sure most people haven't heard about 75% of what I've worked on.
Well, I can definitely say, there's some really awesome stuff in there. I haven't read everything, but again, I'll gush on Made in Korea for a bit, but definitely, if you guys haven't heard of Skip to the End or read any of Skip to the End, I promise you're going to want to do that. Maybe like a little tiny bit of promotion for it on the shirt there. Maybe, I mean, not necessarily, but
anybody who knows me well enough knows that I'm high-key obsessed with the band and the whole sort of punk rock movement of the early 80s to the early 90s in the Pacific Northwest. So my obsession with the band fueled that book, and it's also just sort of created its life of its own, where anything related to the band or Kurt Cobain, I have friends just bombing me with messages like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? It's like, yeah, I've seen that already. But like, I love that everyone now looks at Nirvana, my friends anyway, and go, oh, that reminds me of Jeremy.
Yeah, it's great to be synonymous with something that's equally great, right? Really, really cool. Yeah, so like I said, we're gonna get into What If Venom. Absolutely, that's definitely what we're here to talk about, amongst other things. But just to get it, right off the bat, I got to talk about Made in Korea for just a second. Let me lead with this. When I first started reading Made in Korea, I'm trying to remember exactly when Made in Korea came out. I don't have the years in front of me, but either way.
God.
I know, right?
2020 maybe, because I think the trade came out in 2021.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that's why we're in that weird period, and I'm sure you remember it as well as I do, especially having released books at that time. But in the comic book shops and everything, it was scary for a second. Some of them shut down for a little bit. Distribution shut down for a tiny bit, and if you had books coming out at that time, it was probably nerve-wracking, and everything to get everything back on a normal schedule and have everything flowing again. But let me just say, here comes this book out of left field. I love indie books. I love Image stuff, all of that. We get Made in Korea. It's got this really dynamic cover. It's got this interesting name, and I'm just like, I hadn't read a solicit or anything, so I'm like, what the hell is this? I pick up everything anyway, so I picked up a copy, of course, and I picked that book up, and I immediately think, I'm like, okay, we're somewhere in. I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, so one of my favorite properties of all time, the original Twilight Zone. So I'm like, we're kind of like in the Twilight Zone a little bit here. We're definitely like in the future and everything, but we're or like ambiguously, I guess, but we're in some kind of Twilight Zone or something. And then I thought to myself, like, is this kind of like a AI type of story too? What's
now I can't think of gets referenced. AI gets referenced.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, and then to make that like a little bit more modern for everybody, like Black Mirror or something. I'm like, okay, are we in that kind of universe or whatever? And that's kind of where I thought the story was going to go. And then I was like, okay, it's going to land like, really nicely or whatever. It's going to be like one of those stories. No, you hit me so hard at the end. And I was like, okay, fuck this. Excuse my language. I don't know if that offends
No,
you or
no
not.
worries.
I didn't ask first, but I was like, okay, I'm like sold on Jeremy Holt now. Like whatever Jeremy Holt does, like because of that ending of that book, it doesn't matter. Like I mean, such a wow.
I appreciate the praise. The ending, actually rereading it, I have less confidence in, because I didn't realize this until the lettering phase of production for the last issue, where my letterer, Adam Wallet, who I've been working with for close to a decade now, will only send me pages that he's lettered. So if I've written no dialogue or no sound effects or anything, he won't send me those pages. So he sent me the batch of lettered pages for issue 6, and I was like, "Hey Adam, was there an upload problem? Because I only got 11 pages." He's like, "Buddy, you only wrote on 11 pages. Like, there's no dialogue." I was like, so then I read it, and it reads very quickly. And so I wasn't really thinking about that at the time. I think as a collected trade, it reads a bit better, but as a single issue, I, I, I did come across some reviews where like, there was like people complaining about there's no words or no dialogue going on. But I'm glad that the ending had an impact on you. So that's nice to hear.
Yeah, a huge impact. And I mean, obviously, reading a comic book is going to be subjective, to the reader and everything like that. But I can tell you, for me, the highest level of praise I could give for the ending of that book. You really landed it, and I really like some of the lack of dialogue, because I hear what you're saying. There maybe is certain points, because I would say if you read the whole thing together, like in trade format, which I have, after the trade came out and everything, I've reread it in trade format. It definitely, I love the way that it reads in a trade. I love the cliffhangeriness of the individual issues as well, but that sparseness in the dialogue at certain points just adds to like the tone of the story for me. It makes it so creepy, and then it makes it kind of almost live in one of those like Twilight Zone-esque worlds. So
Yeah, I think for me, that was an opportunity to exercise a bit more confidence in not only my writing, but also the arts. And Gigi gets all the credit in that regard. She really brought that book to life. And so for me, I look at the art and I look at a collaboration with an artist as, it needs to be collaborative. And I think early in my career got really, I think this is a mistake a lot of writers do, where you just write a lot of dialogue, you over explain a lot of exposition, and you forget that the art is also supposed to be communicating the story, and they're supposed to work in tandem. So Maiden Korea came in my career at the right time, where I had the confidence to kind of let the art carry parts of the narrative that it needed to carry, and I didn't need to say anything. That's been a completely different experience working for someone like Marvel, where they're very much like, they need to be talking. They need to be talking. I'm like, I don't want them to be talking, but okay.
yeah, I can definitely imagine that. There's got to be such a different process, and writing your creator own stuff, or writing like an independent book where you have like that complete control there, where you're like, let it breathe for a little bit, let the art speak here, and then they need a little bit more dialogue injected in the stories from the big two. Here's the last question I'll ask about Maiden Korea, and then we'll move on. Because again, I said I don't want to fanboy out too much here. Let me get back down to basics. But I'm not going to spoil the end or any potential or anything like that of the book. But is it ever possible it's something you would revisit? Is there a volume 2 in your head or anything like that? Did you leave it off on the perfect mark? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, there was a second arc. People who have read it, Kim Dong-chul, who's the bioengineer programmer, he has a cousin. And so for me, the second arc would have pushed further into that future of that world. It would have focused on the cousin. It would focus on why the cousin's doing what he's doing with this proprietary technology that he's essentially stolen, but he's using in kind of a black market way. And so it would get more into the body horror, the sort of like body modification, more techy than even the first story arc explored. So yeah, I definitely have ideas for it. The reality doing a book at Image is that unless you're a really big name, Image does not front page rates.
Mhm.
So Gigi and I worked on that book essentially on spec. And so the arrangement is obviously Image has to take their percentage from printing, but you own everything outright. And whatever it makes, you split with your creative team however you see fit. So it's a big risk for the creative team to assume that the book will sell well. And I think Main Korea sold decently for what it is. But it is really hard to convince my creative team to sort of get the band back together when, there's financial concerns, just living life. It was this unique opportunity where Gigi was prepared to work on this on the side while she worked on other projects. And it's why it was delayed, because by the time we got the green light, she had already accepted a book offer for something else. So I had to essentially wait a year. So like we would both like to do it. I see other avenues that I'd like to explore more of that story outside of comics, which I'm developing. I have written a pilot script for a TV series adaptation that I'd love to see happen. That's in really early stages. But the things I mentioned in that second arc, I've sort of baked in to that TV adaptation for sure.
Amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to hear some more about that whenever that comes down the pipeline. So very, very cool. I guess let's go ahead and get into What If Venom then. I guess the reason I've called you here today. uh, Definitely, I want to start off with the beginnings of this. So I always like to ask this, and sometimes this is a dumb question. Sometimes the answer is kind of like you almost throw your hands up and want to roll your eyes at the question, but feel free. I won't be offended. But where did the idea come from? And did you approach Marvel? Did Marvel approach you about it? And what's the genesis of this?
Great question. So, from my personal experience, it's usually an editor at Marvel who comes to you with an opportunity.
Mhm.
So, my first start was because of Made in Korea. An editor reached out to me about doing a short story in their Voices anthology. So, um, I asked which characters were available because it was specifically for AAPI month. So, I was like, what Asian characters do you have available? And the ones that I was familiar with obviously were taken. So, I was like, "Do you have anybody that's biracial? Because I'd like to tell that story too." And so I landed on Silk, or sorry, not Silk, Silhouette, who is a crime fighter from New Warriors from a '90s team up in New York City. And that character was written very problematically in the '90s, as I'm sure a lot of characters were. I mean, there's a scene where she can move through shadow, but for whatever reason, her clothes don't go with her. And I always was like, why? So she teleports at one point into the middle of a gunfight with the Punisher, and she's stark naked. And I'm like, this is absurd. So with that, I, really wanted to give her, a better story, and she doesn't have a civilian name. And so that was my hook, was identity, right? That was the whole theme of the anthology. And how can a superhero exist without having a civilian name? They can't compartmentalize their lives. So, that worked out. And then that obviously got other editors on my radar. And um, another editor reached out about the Silk story, and that editor really gave me a lot of leeway because I wrote a 10-page Silk story from a first-person POV, which when I pitched it, my editor said, no. I said, you know what? Either we do this or I'm not going to do it. Like, I want to do something I want to do. And like, I don't think this is outside that realm of possibility. And he said, oh, okay, just like write it and we'll see where it goes. And as soon as the layouts came in, he said, this is fucking awesome. Like, he's like, I wasn't sure, but then I saw the layouts. I'm like, oh, I get it. So I do give credit to my editor, Devin, for giving me sort of that opportunity to tell that story, which I think was great because then I think a few months later, they did a Nightwing first person POV with
Mhm.
DC. And I was like, hey, this sort of story format can work if you do it right. I like that mine was published first. um, but yeah, Devin came to me and was like, "Do you want to work on a miniseries?" So the only other long format Marvel work I'd done, I'd done a Iron Fist 6-part series for their digital Infinite Scroll
Mhm.
comics, and I worked with the character Pei, which was cool. but it wasn't in print, and it's like, you always want to hope to be able to do a miniseries at Marvel. And so this came up, and my editor explained the history of What If. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't know how far back What If goes. I mean, it goes way back into the 80s. And so I was like, sure. The only request he had was, I need you to try to come up with a concurrent storyline, because what happens is we take these individual heroes who get, a what if scenario, and then we just inexplicably bloop them into the same timeline, and then they have to face a bad guy, which we could do, but he said, that's not something I'm interested in pursuing again. I said, okay. So I said, who can I use? He said, just throw out some names. So I threw out a bunch of names, and I got the thumbs up for all of them. So I was like, okay. So I came up with a storyline, a revisionist history of the character, based on the Eddie Brock scenario at the church. So I basically have another hero step in, and then Venom's history goes in a completely different timeline. So I did have leeway to kind of tell, a side of Venom I don't think anyone's seen. The thing I wanted to focus on was not only the physical bond and the way that parasite commandeers a host, but I thought what was more fascinating was, what is Venom's psychological prowess? Because, we all know what Moon Knight can do with his multiple personalities, but Venom can tap into a host on other levels than just taking over their arms and legs. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, that's what I want to focus on. So my editor has said, this is a very heady concept you're trying to do, but he's helped me sort of ground it, because some of it, he's like, this is too subtle. It's like, okay, fair enough. So it's been a learning curve for sure.
Such a cool concept, though. I immediately, whenever I heard about it and saw that it was, like I don't know, I mean, a miniseries, like a 5-part, I thought, this is exactly like what every comic book reader does. They take like a character and they kind of like mash them up. Like, well, I wonder what would happen if this character did this, or if this character, had the powers of this character also, or whatever. So it's really, really cool that I'm not trying to downplay your work here by any means, but just on the ground level, like on the most basic level, or
it's
or whatever.
At its core, I got to be sponsored by Marvel to write some fanfic, essentially. And I do see Secret Wars behind you, which is cool. So I did read a ton of Venom's original history. And yeah, so to answer your question, sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, you're fine, but please.
My editor came to me with the blueprint of an idea, and so I riffed on that. I had pitched something entirely different that was not even sort of a what if structure, and I just swung for the fences, and he said, that's a really cool idea. It's not what if, but let's just save it. And depending on how this does, maybe we can revisit this larger idea, which would be potentially sort of a symbiote event I could sort of orchestrate, be the architect of. I'm going to just temper expectations at that point. Probably will never see the light of day, but yeah, I do like the fact that I got to take these heroes and bond them. And the struggle with doing anything at Marvel or DC is just continuity. And it's very different to create our own comics, obviously, because I'm beholden to a history, as opposed to my personal stuff. I make up whatever I want. So that's been a huge learning curve that has been a challenge for me. And I realize the Venom thing is hard enough to write about Venom, the character. It's exponentially more complicated when you write 5 other well-known heroes into Venom's history, and then you have to be mindful of each hero's history and where you can and can't go with them. And so it's been a learning curve, but I've really enjoyed it. And it'll be fun to be able to promote a Marvel series for the next 5 months.
Yeah, exactly. I like that you point that out. That's something that I think a lot of people, a lot of readers aren't really thinking about or whatever. You go to these hugely established characters, these big characters, Venom, such like I don't know what you would call him, like a fan favorite standout since Venom came about. And then you're, going into, things like, Doctor Strange, Loki, all of this really, really storied, history of characters and stuff there. And yeah, you've got editors and all of this, but I mean, I can only imagine the amount of research and books and everything that you have to read, to make sure that you're telling the story coherent enough with the history of what's going on.
It is a lot. I mean, my first foray into it was doing the silhouette story, and my editor gave me a bunch of material. Or sorry, I also did a Mantis story. Well, I'm forgetting what I've been working on. So I did Mantis, and that was even harder because I didn't realize Mantis went all the way back to the 70s, 60s. And so she was an original Avenger. She, at one point, was a stamp. I mean, that's how popular she was. And so that was hard because my editor essentially was like, here's over 1,000 pages of back issues. And so I read all of it, and a lot of it is great. A lot of it didn't apply to my story, but you need to absorb all of that to then distill what you want to take away and use that isn't treading on something that's already been done. I think that with Venom, it was a bit easier, again, because of the what if construct, and I didn't have to go, well, this has already happened, or this didn't happen. It's like, well, this is from point one. After Venom gets burned by Peter Parker, I sort of have free reign to do whatever I wanted to do with him.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that whole idea though, and stepping in right there from the beginning and then telling that story, with different characters, just such a cool approach there. I really love it. And I really like. I had Steve Orlando on the show just a couple of episodes back. Yeah, Steve Orlando, great creator, amazing writer. And Steve was, we talked about the Miguel O'Hare Spider-Man 2099 that's just wrapped up. Issue 5 of that just wrapped, and almost, I mean, definitely not the same concept, a different vibe there, but we're taking Miguel and we're putting Miguel in these different situations and introducing kind of like new villains in the 2099 world in each issue. And there were weekly issues came out, 5-part series, weekly issues. We explored Blade, Marvel Zombie, Terror Inc., Man Thing, all of this throughout that series there. And the really cool thing about that to me was, that Steve was able to play in that sandbox, able to take those characters, not really, I mean, I guess you could say mash them up because you're making a new character for the 2099 universe, but kind of like you are here, you're taking these established characters and putting them together with the symbiote, and then making it part of the What If series, and just really cool things that Marvel's trying out right now. I think a lot of times things can get bogged down with all this long continuity, and then people complain about events. I'm not one of those people. I love events. Like, throw me an event anytime. I'll buy every single tie-in and everything else. Like, I'm all about it. But some people do. They say it's too much to keep up with or whatever. And I like the concept of this, and also what Steve was doing over there. It's kind of like you can just get in. There's 5 issues. Like, get in. Take what you want out of it. If you want to love a single issue and then maybe not one of the other ones or whatever, like, fine. There's not too much like through line in between all of it, but just a really, really cool concept. I want to ask you this, and again, I'm not at any point in time asking for any spoilers whatsoever. So you don't have to worry about that. But aside from what you've told us so far, like, what can we expect throughout this series?
Great question. I think what I would advise people is to keep an open mind. Know what you know about Venom, know what you know about the heroes, but just be open to where the story goes. Because, again, I'm trying to focus on an aspect of the Venom character that I don't see gets explored enough, and I think is way more interesting than the physical bond. And this will be explored through the hero's struggle. And the assumption is that, from what I've understood with the history of the characters, that a bond occurs and then the host and Venom make an agreement. And sort of my hypothesis or thesis on this is that I want to see what happens when the host doesn't agree. And so how can I tell that story where, we know how to separate the parasite from the host? There's sonic sounds, there's fire, there's things of that nature. But the challenge for me was, how does Venom weaken a host where they have to comply?
Mhm.
And so that was, again, if you look at just like something as basic as sleep deprivation, I don't care if you're Bruce Banner, if you are sleep deprived, you're sort of helpless. And no one, as far as I can see, has ever explored sleep deprivation from a character study. So that's really sort of, I mean, I suppose that's not too much of a spoiler, but just Venom is taking over without permission, essentially. And so how does that play out? And what is Venom's ultimate goal in the end? So I think, again, go in with what you know, but also check it at the door and just, strap in and see if you like the ride.
Yeah, some amazing concepts to like ponder there, and I love how you point that out. That's something that again, like goes. I don't know. People don't talk about it much, but it's such a huge thing. I mean, just imagine how shitty you are off like not getting enough sleep or something. It's something so simple that we don't like to think about a lot unless it becomes a problem for you. But yes, sleep deprivation. I mean, I can't think of a time where I, went a whole night without sleeping. I have friends that, I have, people who I know who work overnight or something, jacked up on caffeine and all of this. And it's just, so much changes about their demeanor and about them. And yeah, you're right. Such a interesting thing to ponder. I can't wait to
It
see
is.
how
And
it
it's
goes back.
like, the sleep deprivation is interesting. I think every superhero and every person in general has their own trauma.
Mhm.
And that to me was exciting because nobody is impervious to trauma. No one is free of it. Everyone has their own trauma based on their own lived experiences. And for me, I want to see what Venom does when he pipes into that trauma and he can basically manipulate the host. And it's like, when you have I used to suffer severe panic attacks. I've experienced my own personal traumas, and it's like, when you're stuck in that panic, you cannot get out.
Mhm.
When you're in a full-blown panic attack, the only real solution in the moment is, I just want to die. I just want this to be over. And I'm sorry, I don't care if you have adamantium claws. If that's the headspace you're stuck in, you're not fighting anyone. You're not
Mhm.
fighting anyone. So again, it's just seeing how Venom manipulates the hosts, and basically does what he wants, which, to a degree, we see that in his storylines, but this is going to be taking it to another level, I hope.
Some really exciting stuff to look forward to there. I definitely like to ask about the working relationships of from artist to writer or sorry, writer to artist, and you touched on that like a little bit at the beginning. But I think it's a nice peek behind the curtain, and we do absolutely have a lot of people who write into the show, who are aspiring writers or artists themselves. Of course, in the comic book community, a lot of people who are trying to break into the community or whatever love to listen to creator interviews and all of that. So I'd love to know, and I think something that I failed to say like a few minutes ago, whenever I was first talking about the book, is kind of relating it to the model that Marvel's doing right now, like they did with the Spider-Man 2099 series. Each issue is illustrated by somebody different. So I absolutely really love that concept. I think that's so cool. That I don't know if that's like something that's better for you or was more work for you, and you definitely don't have to answer that on air. But
That's a good question. Working for Marvel, as a writer, you are very much siloed. So your editor, depending on who that is, will obviously throw you names, will tell you who's working on it, but they didn't ask for me for a list of artists. To be honest, I had to let that go because I am very particular about style, regarding stories. But knowing what this is, it's like, anyone that my editor wants is probably going to be fine. So I think, as far as like career advice and breaking in, I think the first thing you need to do obviously is have a goal. What do you want to achieve?
Mhm.
For me, it was getting published. Like, I was not interested in self-publishing. To me, and no, not to knock anyone who kickstarts things, because I have a lot of friends that do, and they make a really good living and lifestyle off of it. To me, it was never satisfying, the thought of self-publishing. the thought of raising money myself to fund a project. I wanted the acknowledgement and the respect of my peers. So that was my goal. Your goal might be different, but what's more important than having a goal is to being able to move those goalposts. So me wanting to be published was the goal, but it wasn't happening for years. I mean, I didn't get first published until 6 or 7 years in. So I wanted to quit all the time, and I did. There were like month stretches, half a year, even a year where I was just like, I'm done. I'm done doing this. I don't like it. And to move the goalpost for me in that scenario was to focus on what do I actually want to do? Like the goal was to be published, cool, but am I doing it just to get published? No, I'm doing it because I enjoy telling stories. So I moved the goalpost to as long as I'm still telling stories and still having fun with it, that's the new goal. Just to follow the fun, as I heard Jordan Peele say in an interview once. He's like, follow the fun. And through that, I kept going. And that's really the only rule in making comics is you can't quit. And comics will never love you. So you're going to want to quit, but you just can't if you want to reach your goals. So that's what I say. And honestly, to do work in Marvel and DC, you're never going to be able to do it right out the gate. I recommend telling your own stories, A, because it's more fun, B, you own that stuff. And if it does reach an audience or a publisher, that is when Marvel and DC will come knocking. And then by that point, you will have developed a routine, a craft that you can then sort of have fun with in the Marvel and DC sandboxes.
Yeah, some stellar advice. Definitely, for all of our up and coming creators. I think, a lot of times it just sounds as simple as, sit down, develop your story and make sure it's a good story. That's something that you can personally tell. But yeah, you're right. You have to get in there and have like a goal in mind, and make sure that, you one, achieve that goal, or it's an achievable goal rather, or that you can move those goalposts. I think a lot of times, people look at that before they get there and see that as like a failure, like if I have to change something or whatever.
Yes.
And I don't think it is. I mean, I think you have to adapt to your situation. You have to adapt to, look, this is something like you were talking about, kickstarting things and stuff a minute ago. I agree with you there. I definitely, have the highest respect for anybody who can do that. I personally, it's too much pressure for me to sit there and think, what happens if I don't get this funded? How am I going to reach out to every single person I know and ask them to donate money to something? And then on top of that, expect people I don't know and all of that. Yeah, it's a lot. But we all work in different ways. So yeah, really cool.
I think to your point, like a fixed mindset is sort of the death of creating. You can't go in with a fixed mindset. And as far as anyone listening to this who wants to write comics, I don't believe in writer's block. I don't think it's a thing. I think it's an excuse. I think the way to address it, for me, and I recommend this to everybody, is go to therapy. Go to therapy because it does two things. A, you learn more about the human condition through your own lens, which is relatable and it's something you can digest and understand. There's so much to yourself you can explore. And when you explore that through therapy, figure out how to take your very lived visceral experiences and weave them into some fiction. Because what I was doing for the first 7 years of my career was I was trying to write towards an audience. I was trying to write towards an editor or a publisher. And it just didn't work because there was no, lack of a better term, heart behind the work. And so my initial assumption was that nobody cares about my problems. Why would anyone want to read about my problems? And then I just realized, well, my fear is that someone's going to take my ideas. I think a lot of people have that fear. But if you pull from your own lived experiences and write those from an authentic place, you'll never have to worry about that because no one can have the exact same experience you had. And more specifically, the choices you made to figure out whether or not I want to put that into a story. And when I started doing that, Made in Korea is one of those stories. The things that were lived experiences to me were the things that people reading it would reach out to me and say, why did you do that? That was my favorite part. It's like, because it resonated, and it was not trying to write to the reader, it was writing about myself. And reality is we all have problems. So, I think that writing from a place of authenticity is the goal, and you develop your own signature, as it were, which helps you stand out.
Yeah, very, very cool. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment as well. Everybody should, have some form of therapy, whether you feel like the, healthiest of mental health people in the entire world or not. You and I, come from a similar background. I grew up, with horrible anxiety, having panic attacks all the time and everything. And wasn't until I got into a specific therapist, that gave me some really, really basic baseline stuff, stuff that you would think, that you read and you kind of pass off, count, deep breathe, blah, 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 all this stuff. And then, you really sit down and practice and do some of that stuff. And you're like, oh, I actually can control this myself. Some really cool eye-opening things to figure out. So yeah, I commend that. I definitely agree with you there. Everyone should have some form of therapy, whatever that is.
Yeah, whether it's just going out with a friend and talking. I mean, just yeah, honestly, just interact with the world around you, and there's just so much content to pull from. But yeah, just write authentically, because honestly, at the end of the day, it's way more fun to do that.
Yeah. So issue number 1 has you teaming up with Jesus Hervas. I'm pretty sure that's how you say Jesus's name. I hope. I know we covered some of Jesus's work on the podcast recently, because I'm pretty sure that Jesus did Invasive with Colin Bond, that just, I think issue number 2 just dropped a couple of weeks ago, and then also did Marvel Unleashed with Kyle Starks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Marvel Unleashed being, if you have not read Marvel Unleashed and looked at the art and everything, highly, highly recommended. Really, really amazing book. Kyle Stark's one of my favorite writers, currently really, really good writer. But how was that working with Jesus? I know, gosh, I don't even have the information in front of me who's on the cover art of issue number 1, or who the cover
Lionel Yu is doing covers.
Okay.
Jesus, if I'm remembering this correctly, is doing issue 1 and issue 4 or 3. He's doing 2 issues from what I understand. Working with him, again, working at Marvel, you're very much siloed. So it's just, I just got a batch of layouts from issue 3 this morning, and it's like, I'm very removed from all of it. It's just like, hey, just give us your thoughts on these layouts, if anything needs to maybe be reviewed or changed. And yeah, so it's been great. I mean, like, obviously everyone they've picked is great. The art coming in is amazing. It's like Christmas. So I mean, so far it's been really great. And as a writer, it's nice to sorry, that's my baby crying.
Oh, you're fine. We usually have dogs barking on the podcast, so it's no problem at all.
It's, to me, it's kind of a luxury to not have to be the project manager. Like, when you do creator on comics, as the writer, you are also sort of the project manager, the editor, and the publisher, so to speak. Because most indie publishers, they have production staff, but usually you have to present something that's more or less completely done, ready to go. So it's nice not to have to do that. And it's nice to just kind of sit back. To me, I equate it now to like an actor sitting in their trailer waiting for, a PA to be like, oh, you're needed on set. And it's kind of nice. I mean, like, I'm not running the show, which in some regards I do enjoy, but doing this stuff, it's nice to just be like, hey, what do you think? So yeah, Jesus has been awesome. I think he was a good pick for the debut issue, which I'm really excited about, because it sets the foundation for what happens in the next 4 issues. So it was important to get someone who could really hit a home run in that regard.
Yeah, really, really great artist there. I can't wait to see that. Well, let me get off of that. And again, we're hitting like the 40-minute mark here, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But you got, what else do you have in the works? Anything that you can talk about? Anything up and coming?
I have stuff coming up that I can't talk about. I'll happily tell you off air. But yeah, I have something really, really, really exciting that I just got news about last week. So I'm really excited to start work on that. I think I should be having an announcement for my next graphic novel, hopefully in the next month or so. But that's coming out through a more traditional book publisher. So it's weird that, the pub date is so far into the future, which is so different than monthly comics. And a part of me is like, I'm excited about doing graphic novels because I do prefer having a one and done product to sell if I was at a convention. But I also sort of do get FOMO when I see my friends being like, "Oh, my issue #1 dropped," which means they're just yeah. My friend Zach Thompson just tweeted like, "It's February. I have a creator-owned book coming out every month until the end of the year," and I'm like, "God, that's awesome." So yeah, a little bit of FOMO, but yeah, very excited about the stuff that I have coming down the pike.
Awesome. Well, we'll all definitely look forward to any announcements, especially big announcements. But I'm pretty sure you can. I don't have your site in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it's just jeremyholt.com.
JeremyHoltBooks.com.
Books.com. Okay, I'm sorry. So jeremyholtbooks.com. So we'll make sure that that'll obviously be in the show notes, but you guys make sure you check that out for any upcoming news. So let me go ahead and just say then What If Venom #1 drops at the end of this month on February 28th. Unfortunately, FOC for #1 obviously already passed on January 15th, but you guys, FOC for issue #2 is not until February 12th. So you still have time to like flood your local comic book shop with emails or phone calls or whatever. I can promise you this, like I love all the covers. They're all freaking amazing. But #2 just holy crap, like blows me away, like the regular A cover for that. So that's definitely one you guys are going to want to hit up your local comic book shop and let them know you want like 4 or 5 copies of in your pool to make sure you have plenty of that cover. So whenever you see Jeremy at like a convention or something, you go get like 2 or 3 signed and some slabbed and everything else. But and then we have a release date for March 13th on that one, and then issue #3 is dropping April 17th, I believe. So and again, all of your stuff will be in the show notes. Jeremy, is there anything else you want to plug? Any socials, or if not any of that stuff, anything you're like just currently really digging right now? Books, music, movies, whatever.
Oh, that's such a complicated question. I don't read enough comics nowadays. You can find me on social media just at Jeremy Holt Books. The comic I read most recently is James Tynion and Josh Hickson's The Deviant #1 through Image, which
So good.
it was like a 40+ page debut, and it just I loved it so much I bought an original page from Josh from issue 1, and like that thing just moves like I hate to say it moves like a movie, like prestige television,
Definitely.
like Fargo or something, and it's so good. I recommend that. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, as for what I'm watching, for reasons unbeknownst to me, I decided to watch the 80s sitcom Who's the Boss from beginning to end.
Wow.
And that is remarkably enjoyable for 8 seasons. So, yeah, Who's the Boss is great. Tony Danza is amazing. And yeah, that's about it. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you so much again for your time. Much appreciated. And yeah, everything will be on the show notes. Jeremy, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Likewise. Happy weekend.
Hello and welcome back to the all new, all different #1 comics podcast with a new series that we're doing here. This is called We Read a Comic. Before we were just calling these bonus episodes, but we figured we'd kind of give it a little bit of a rebranding. And like my co-host here of the night said, we did just read a comic, so why the hell not call it We Read a Comic? So that's what we're calling it here. But Yiding, welcome in. How are you? So great. Like you and I just basically met here on the screen. So very cool. Really cool to meet you and cool to have you here. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. Life is life.
Yeah, sure. Life is life in 2024. Completely understood. Yeah, like I said, we'll try to keep it, pretty focused, pretty straightforward. Not we don't have to get into the comic book news and all of that stuff. But Yiding, what we're going to be talking about today is a book that I kind of just threw at you. Just it's a book that I've been meaning to check out for a while. I don't know if you had read it before this time. I have not. But yeah, it's 30 Days of Night, issue #1 by Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith. So was it your first time reading this book or have you read it before?
Yeah, it was absolutely my first time. I had no familiarity with the series or the franchise whatsoever. All I knew I did know the premise just because a friend of mine mentioned to me in passing, like maybe a year or 2 years ago, just briefly, just came up in conversation. So I knew that it was about vampires in the Arctic or close to the Arctic, where there are 30 days of night. But that's literally the only thing I knew about it. Other than that, I was going in fresh, which is why I was really interested in doing this, because I'm looking at this like in a complete vacuum. This first issue, I have no idea where any of this is going.
Yep. Yeah, I always think that's a lot of fun too. I love, finding comics where I hadn't read the solicit or something like that, and then just jumping in and then thinking like, "Wow, this is really cool," or "This wasn't my type of thing," or whatever. It's always really fun to go into a series completely blind. And yeah, like you said, it's really about those 30 days of night. How awesome is it that this is the title of the book. They really kind of made out on the title here. It definitely describes what's going on very, very well, and it's a huge centerpiece of the book. So really, really cool. Like I said, this was published by IDW, and this is like all the way back from 2002. So. I mean, probably a good portion of the listening audience wasn't even born yet whenever this book came out. So, really awesome. I know my other bonus episode co-host Benny, was most likely not born yet then. So really cool. Steve Niles, Ben Templesmith. What do you know about those two creators? Anything?
I'm familiar with Templesmith's art because I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it here and there, like
Yep.
in the series Fell that he did with Warren Ellis. Uh,
Yes.
I don't think I've read anything by Steve Niles, unless I'm blanking on something. But yeah, I don't believe I have. What is that?
I just had to. I don't know if you can see it. Probably not
Oh,
too
right,
well
all
the
right.
lighting.
That's from Fell, I assume.
Yeah,
Or
this is from Gotham by Midnight, some Ben
okay.
Templesmith original art. But yeah, I grabbed that one day from him. Really, really cool guy. I've been trying to get him on the show forever, but he's like, I think he's in Australia, and just I can't get the times to match up at all. But yeah, so before we get into it, we're obviously going to get into it. We're going to talk about every aspect of this book and everything. But uh, do you have any like general first impressions on the way that Steve Niles wrote this book, on the way that Ben Templesmith illustrated it?
Well, before I even get into that, I want to talk a
Mhm.
bit about the title because you were talking
Yeah,
about
please.
how the title is like so apt.
Mhm.
It's a more clever title than it seems at first, right? Because
Yeah.
when I first hear a title, I assume they just mean 30 nights, like just a fancy way of saying 30 nights.
Yep.
But no, they actually mean 30 days that are nighttime, 30 like daytime periods that are also nighttime because of the look of the geographic location. So yeah, that's just a little thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I agree. It's really clever. It's really interesting that they put out a movie with Josh Hartnett in it, and it's 30 Days of Nights, and then you got Josh Hartnett. I think right before that doing 40 Days and 40 Nights. Was that the title of that movie where where he can't have sex for like 40 days or something? I don't know. Interesting stuff, but yeah, Steve Niles has done quite a few things. He did like a long run of Simon Dark at DC Comics. He did the October faction over at IDW. Did some stuff on Spawn: The Dark Ages. Wrote a little bit on Kick Ass and Hellspawn. So yeah, he's definitely done stuff. I think the first thing I think about when I think about this book is it's not so much that the writing stands out to me. I think it's well written. It's definitely the art, like that. It's such a huge piece of this book. It's so stylized in like this weird way. I'm a huge Bill Sienkiewicz fan. It almost gives me some vibes of that, but not quite. It's really creepy and eerie, and it definitely works for the book. But yeah, that's like kind of the first thing that I take away from it is that Ben Templesmith art.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's it basically makes the story. Without knowing the creative process here, my assumption would be that it was written with Temple Smith's art in mind because like
Mhm.
the plot here, the story here, like suits this art so well, and vice versa. It this like the oppressive, like dark atmosphere, like throughout this whole thing. It's just a perfect fit for what the story's trying to do, where the story's going.
Yeah, exactly. I think you think about some of those scenes in the deep snow, and it's pitch black outside. We've got the contrast of the white snow, and then these hyper violent, hyper gory vampires just tearing someone apart with blood and visceral everywhere. So yeah, really really cool stylized art on that. Well, let's get into the story then. We can go ahead and start talking about that. And like I said, maybe we'll just kind of bounce it back and forth and see how that works for us. But this book does open in Barrow, Alaska. I think I'm saying that correctly. In November on November 17th, 2001, and it's stated that it's the town is known as the most northern point community in North America, and it's known for its below zero temperatures and darkness. And then it's noted that the sun doesn't set between May and August and doesn't rise between the middle and of November and middle of December. Um, and then it's kind of set that today will be the last day that the sun will shine for 30 days. And uh, if you feel comfortable, taking it from there.
Yeah. The opening page is very okay. So this was written in 2002, right?
Yeah, yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So I think I'm always like timelines are always kind of fuzzy for me at best, but I
Mhm,
think this would have been around a time like decompressed storytelling really started to like become a big thing.
mhm.
And we have this like very decompressed opening here, where the first page is just literally just the reveal of a town. And decompression sometimes gets a bad rap, but like this is an instance of like how it can be used very effectively, I feel. Because yes, on one hand, it's not progressing the quote plot very much,
Mhm.
but it is such an effective atmospheric opening. It just conveys that sense of like isolation of the town of Barrow that the story sort of pivots around.
Yeah, it really does. It really, kind of illustrates that, and then we're given like the tiniest bit of exposition, and when I say that, I mean you could take that narrative there and say that they're really kind of saying a lot or whatever, and they are,
Well,
but
just to be
it's
clear, I was talking about like the first page entirely, but yeah, yeah, go ahead.
okay, okay, yes, well, yeah, that first page, yeah. I don't have it open in front of me, but yeah, as I remember, yes, very very intense. It's on the, it's showing Burrow there, and everybody, kind of, it invokes the sense of like the town's about to shut down basically. We're about to start getting these 30 days of night. Eh, so much is shown there and not said. And then when I talk about that exposition that kind of happens a little bit later through some of the panels and everything, through some of the narrative of the book, I think that those opening shots really do say a lot of that without saying it in the exposition. So yeah, from there we go over to we kind of meet our main characters. We meet Evan and Stella. I think yes, Evan is how I pronounce his name. Sorry, and um, and
Yeah,
it's like
now
a
that you mention
really
it, I
Mhm.
I just realized it's one of those names I've only ever seen in writing.
Yeah, right. It's like,
I
have
also
I
have
said
no
this
idea
out
how.
loud? Yeah, Evan, yeah. And I always second guess myself anytime I say a name. So, well, like I said, it could be Sam, and I would, be scared that I said it wrong. So, uh, I like the scene that it opens up on them. I like the way that we're introduced to these characters. I like how we're seeing that they're both cops or whatever, and they're investigating the scene of all these stolen cell phones and finding out what's going on there. It's very interesting because I feel like in a lot of other books there would be a little bit laid out before that, before we got to that issue of the cell phones disappearing and then finding it and everything like that. I think that Steve Niles, really sets up the story nicely with the way that he does that. Them finding those cell phones, and they're kind of buried in a hole there. Have Yiding, did you say that you've seen this movie or you've not?
No, I've never like all I knew was the premise.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, yeah. So I had no idea what was going to happen. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't really think about it, but now that you mentioned, yeah, it is. It is a very sudden development. Like we're jumping right into this situation of the cell phones all missing.
Yeah, and I think it's the atmosphere of what's going on itself that really lends itself to the way that the story is told and everything. uh, we we don't have to spend too much time on kind of the town shutting down and everything. That's kind of told through the art in itself, like I was talking about a minute ago. And then we kind of jump straight into action, and it's not the action that we're that's I don't know. They're not foretelling the action of what's going to happen in the series. We don't even actually know that anybody's a vampire in this issue. I mean, it's not really addressed uh, by name. I don't think they say the word vampire in this individual issue that I recall, unless you do.
Yeah, I don't think they did. No.
Hmm.
And I think if you had no idea what the premise would be, I think this scene here of the cell phones, it would be, it's a very effective scene because it just makes you wonder, like, what the hell is going on,
Yeah.
Why are there like, there are like, you know, s- a pile of like someone stealing like all the cell phones in a town and burning them up. That's an odd development, It's like that's not serial killer behavior exactly. That's just weird. So yeah, it definitely catches your attention and makes you wonder what the hell is going on.
Yeah, it's very odd. And then you think about how, the town's basically about to shut down. Uh, they're basically about to, be in dark for 30 days. A lot of people leave the town. Now, if you look at, you know, the places that this, kind of really happens, or even, scenes from the movie and stuff like that, where they can expand upon it a little bit more, a lot of people don't stay during this time. It messes with people's sleep schedule too much. All of that. They have other things they have to do, whatever. And a lot of people leave town whenever this happens. So for this to happen, for this to be like our kind of point of action here, where everybody's cell phones turn up burnt in this hole. It's kind of terrifying if you think about it. Of course, it was the early 2000s. I guess people weren't as reliant on their cell phones as they are now. I mean, now I can't even imagine how this would happen. You have it glued to your side all the time, so nobody's grabbing my cell phone without me noticing. But I guess maybe in 2002 it would be a little bit easier to, you know, kind of leave it over there next to your nightstand plugged in and not really worry about it. You couldn't really go on Google or anything like that in 2002 on your phone, so I guess I could see it happening. But
Yeah, I think these days it would be definitely a much harder task to accomplish something like this. Not just
yeah,
because everyone like has their cell phones with them all the time, but people have like their cell phones and like two or three other digital devices usually.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'd be much more difficult now. I'm sure they could mess with the Wi-Fi or 5G or something instead. But yeah, they'd have to figure something different out. Now back to the story. The couples watching the sunset together, and this kind of happens because Evan is pretty insistent on going out and doing whatever he's got to do, but Stella is very uh, if if you don't want to get in a giant fight, if you don't want to sleep on the couch tonight, whatever, you're gonna stay here and watch the sunset with me. So so
Yeah.
that's what they do, and then it flashes over. And this
But
is
before we
something
get to
that's
that though, let
sure,
me
yeah,
ask you, like,
please.
how old do you think they are? Because this is something that I don't think is entirely clear. I would assume they're supposed to be an older couple, like
Yes.
based on a few clues, like the name, for instance. I don't think many young people are called Eben or Eben or however it's pronounced.
Yep.
Um, and also, like some of his expressions, like "hold your horses," I think he says at the beginning. So I mean, Templesmith's art it's amazing, but it's not always easy to tell people's ages. So I'm just curious, like, what did you make of this? Like, what was your read on their age?
I thought about that too, and I think the only reason I even thought about it was because of the comparison to the movie. Yeah, like I said, Josh Hartnett is playing Evan, so he's probably in his 20s or something there. Maybe 30 at the most. But Yeah, these characters are definitely older than that. They seem, I don't know, a little like a Gristle, kind of hardened couple that, maybe in their, I'm going to say at least 50, is kind of what I'm imagining. In their 50s somewhere, probably haven't hit like 60 yet, but maybe young to mid 50s. Is that kind of the read you had on it, or did you think a different age?
I had it a bit younger. I thought maybe like mid 40s, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
same ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And you're right with Ben Templesmith, especially on the faces. His art is so stylized. I think that sometimes you'd have to be a huge fan of his art to really enjoy some of the faces. The way that he does them. Um, I don't think it's for everybody. And he is a great artist. Taking nothing away from him, I just don't think it's as universal a face that you would normally see in comic book artwork. Of
Mhm.
course, it being the early 2000s, things very, very different. We're going back to that hyper stylized indie look, like in an IDW book and everything. It completely makes sense. Just very unique choice on the faces there. I don't know if you follow uh, any of these people's current work. Ben Templesmith just put out a book through, I believe it was Massive, and he did it with the comic book influencer guy Comic Tom writing, and it's called Crashdown. That book just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. I actually haven't checked it out, but I don't know if you
No, no, this is my
have.
first time hearing of it.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's probably not heavily on my radar for one reason or another that I won't speak of, but it's definitely not Ben Templesmith. So, um, uh, yeah. But to get back in the story, it's really interesting here because now we flash over to another scene. Now we kind of get out our borrow for a minute, and we flash over to excuse me, New Orleans, and here we meet some really interesting characters. It took me like quite a bit of digging to figure out who these characters were. Two of them are named. One is George and one is Taylor. Did you catch the female's name?
Um, I don't think I did. I think she's Taylor's mom, but
Mhm.
that's all we have on her, that she's Mama, right?
Exactly. That's kind of what I had in my notes, and then I said, no, let me try to dig a little deeper and figure out who this is. And she comes up a little bit later, in different series and stuff. But her name's Judith, and she owns an occult store. So that's where they are. I was honestly, thinking the whole time. I'm like, we're in New Orleans. Is she like supposed to be like a voodoo priestess or something like that? And yeah, that's not where they're going with it. She doesn't have anything supernatural about her other than she's into the occult and has a store for it. So that's kind of what's going on with them. And George is coming to that store to tell her that he's found evidence of, again, it's not said, the word vampires is not used, but vampires who, through encrypted emails, are planning a gathering. Uh, and this is where kind of the genius of the book happens. This is where you start to kind of hear the plot of what's going on. Excuse me, these vampires plans to uh, kind of have like a solid month to just feed off of a town and produce carnage and not have to worry about anything. So how did this hit you whenever this happened?
You're absolutely right that, this scene is the emails here, they are very effectively ominous. There is just that very disturbing vibe to them under the
Mhm.
surface.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really interesting. And again, I think going back and reading this, we both knew it was a vampire book. A lot is implied, uh, but I really don't see it. I don't see a single. Uh, I don't see vampire referenced once. So I think that that's so cool. I could have myself thought it was like a zombie book or something if I didn't know anything about it.
That's funny because, like, I had the same impression for some reason. Like, when I was first about to read this, I was thinking, like, like, because I didn't really know anything about it. I just thought, isn't it a zombie like story? Like, didn't I hear that somewhere? Like, for some reason I had that impression. I'm probably confusing it with something else. So I had that impression, but then I remembered like, oh no, wait, my friend told me it was about vampires now, so that can't be right. But yeah, it's interesting that both our minds sort of went there. About
Yeah.
these letters,
Mhm.
I do wonder like how much they're expecting like the reader to like start like piecing together that is about vampires at this point. Because I think like for the astute reader at this point, they might have already started putting two and two to get one and one together to get two.
Mhm.
And I do wonder if like the letter V here for this person's name is like supposed to be like sort of like hint in that direction. I mean, I'm assuming like later we'll find out what it stands for, and that's like I'm assuming it's not the word vampire. But still, I mean, for the uninitiated reader, I wonder if like that is supposed to like sort of like like put that thought into your head that V would remind, even if they don't think V does not necessarily stand for vampire, the letter V there sort of like puts their mind in that direction.
Yeah, really interesting because I hadn't thought about it that way. When I sat down to read this, I won't lie. I read, it's just a 3-part mini. That's how this book was sold. So I just, I went ahead and read the whole thing. I won't get into anything beyond the first issue, of course. That's all we're going to talk about now. But yeah, I think that both of us going in knowing it's a vampire book, we might be missing subtleties like that. We might be missing, or clues that were, breadcrumbs that were laid along the way. Because I don't know how this was solicited back in 2002. I'm not too sure if they were like, here's the new epic vampire story. Of course, this predates stuff like, vampires being very, very big again, like, whenever Twilight came out and stuff like that. So I think even before, things like Underworld and all of that, Van Helsing, I think. Um, so whereas IDW, pitching this as like the rise of vampires, vampires are back, baby, or something. I don't know. Maybe they were kind of shying away from that. I think that both of us thinking along the lines or having the thought of zombies is like an important thing because the early 2000s. That's what I think about, with horror. It's synonymous with zombies. Zombies were everywhere.
Have you heard about that theory about how like zombies and vampires alternate in popularity in pop culture, like based on like what political party is in power in the US?
Wow, I have not, but I mean, please tell me more because yeah, it sounds like a great
I,
theory.
I can't remember which is which, but like the observation that people have made is that like when one party is in power, like vampire fiction tends to like be like suddenly be in the zeitgeist, and then when it's the other party's turn, it becomes zombies. And again, I forget which party's associated with which, but like the people who made this observation, they tied it into like people's fears about how vampires like are very like um, are like very much in line with certain people's fears about one party, while zombies are very much in line with with other people's fears about the other party.
I'd love to find, an article or a thesis on this. Like, I'd love to read that. That sounds so up my alley. I love things like that. Really, really cool. Yeah, I could definitely see that, especially once you break down, what those particular monsters or whatever are capable of and their mentality and everything, and then you kind of align that with the different political parties. Yeah, I can see that being very, very interesting. Very cool. I like that you brought that up. I'm gonna have to make a note of that to make sure I look up some articles or something. Really interested in that. um uh,
Before we move
Going,
on to the next scene,
please.
so at the well, do you have your copy with you in front of you or to look at, or
I can grab it.
the fourth panel? That this is one of those. This is I think this is the one page here where I think like the stylization gets maybe a bit too much in the way of the storytelling because what is in that fourth panel? Is he holding a sheet of paper or
Okay, so you're talking, there's like four square panels, like
the
in
third
a
of those?
square together.
Yeah, so the third of those panels,
Okay.
the fourth altogether on the page.
Yes. Okay. I have no idea what's happening there. It looks like you're seeing, yeah, up close of a shirt and maybe an arm, but then you get a hand holding something that might be a pen. Maybe something's being written. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I mean, my best guess is it's the papers that he later hands a lady. But
Hmm.
but yeah, it's again, it's this is I think this is the one place where the stylization like gets maybe like is at odds with like the storytelling needs. But that's the cost of doing business when you have like amazing stylist like Ben Templesmith. Like it's worth the cost. I feel like you might get the occasional like unclear panel here or there, but like what like the strength of like the mood that he sets is well worth it.
Yeah, you're completely right about that because I do think whenever I look at stuff like this, and the best thing that I can relate it to, I don't know if you're a big New Mutants fan. New Mutants, one of my favorite comics from Marvel in the 80s and 90s there. But when Bill Sienkiewicz was on the book, I'm talking Demon Bear Saga and stuff like that. Uh, I mean, that's the epitome of stylization. You have stylized art. I think Bill Sienkiewicz all day. That's all I can think of. And you know, you sacrifice something for tone 100% because while I think that Bill Sienkiewicz is one of the greatest comic book artists in memory that I can think of, he's definitely not for everybody. He's not straightforward. It's definitely very, very world building. It's very heavily detailed. It's there's so much going on, and it's to use the term abstract just does it a huge disservice because whatever's more than abstract is what it is. But you're correct. You get a certain vibe, you get a certain tone, and this it transcends cinematic and stuff like that. I mean, you're looking at noises, and when I say you're looking at noises, you're also transcending automatopoeia. Like it's just you're watching music at that point. Like it's very, very interesting. But yeah, you're getting a tone, and I think that that's one of the most important things that I could say about this book. To bring somebody like, or not somebody, but to bring Templesmith on this project. Think of the same story with a very straightforward artist or something. Put a Ryan Stegman on this or something. Where does it end up? It's a generic book. It doesn't, in my opinion. There's not much you can do with that kind of art. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, 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 no. I'm 100% in agreement there. Like I said earlier, the art absolutely makes the story. And again, but though, in Steve Niles' defense, like he probably wrote this with Templesmith in mind. Like if he was writing for Stegman, he'd probably write it in a very different way.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely right. I would agree too. I think one of the things that I always like to envision when I'm reading a comic book is what does the script look like that the writer sent over to the artist? What are their notes like? Is this like a full cinematic screenplay? Where they're like, all right, over the shoulder shot, blah blah blah, mid range, nighttime, whatever, or are they just kind of like, all right, here we go. We're in a town in Alaska. Not a lot going on. Flash over to that's what I envision here. I envision that Steve Niles has something in his head, but he's like, I'm gonna let Templesmith run this thing because that's my whole book right there. It's zombies in Alaska. Go.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I can't imagine too many notes on the page here, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not too sure. I'm definitely not at that level of writing, so I wouldn't know, I guess. But going back to the book, we talked about the George showing Judith the evidence of vampires through the encrypted emails and everything. We get back over to Barrow, and the couple, meaning Eben and Stella, receive a call and they leave to go respond to it. And then we get to this diner, and the diner is really important, in the book as well as the movie. They use the same one and everything. I really want to talk about this movie at some point. I'm like chomping at the bit, and I don't know why. So you're going to have to do me the hugest favor ever, like one day, and go back and watch this movie so we can talk about it. But but for now, I'll shut up about it. But we get over to the diner, and there's like a very strange man there, and he is, fighting with the staff about having whiskey and raw hamburger meat. And one of the first things that jumps out, and one of the things that I love, and I think something that makes this story really, really compelling, is the stylized lettering in the word balloons from these characters. So we get over to that character, and you have this very, very unique voice. It's not all the time that a letterer can convey that uh, through the style of their, the font that they're using, or whatever the writing that they're creating in that word balloon. A lot of times, a letterer, comes in and they're like, okay, well, obviously this character has a different voice, or they have an accent, or they're speaking in a different dialect or language or whatever, and they stylize that different. But something about this here makes it so like unhinged and otherworldly. Like, I love it. I think that it works really, really well with the book. I'd really like to compliment that. Did you have any thoughts on that?
No, no, I agree. It's almost as if he stepped in from a completely different story.
Hmm.
Here's this world of normalcy that we've been in so far, and then in comes this element that's absolutely not normal. Like, that feels like it stepped in from a whole different world. And that's partly the art, but the lettering also plays such a huge part in that.
Yeah, it's like up to this point, we've had a few shifts in the story. Of course, we're, uh, we find the centerpiece at the beginning where the cell phones are all taken and burnt and buried and all of that. And, things are happening. Things are moving right along. There's no problem with pacing or anything. But this is like a big turn in the story, because at this point, we're like, wait a second, this guy doesn't belong here. Obviously, this is a tight knit town of people who all know one another. They know town's about to be shut down. Like, they know what's going on. They know it's about to be a whole month of darkness and everything. And now we have this non-local guy here at the diner asking for these really, really odd things, and speaking in this really, really weird way. So now the book has hit that point, that point of no return. What's going to happen now? Yeah, I think that the pacing here is really, really, it's done really well. It's just action, 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 nonstop. But it does have room to breathe, not technically through the story, more through the art and everything, more through that sparseness and everything that's going on with Templesmith's art. But yeah, I really wanted to take a second to point that out, because I think that lettering is really important.
Yeah,
Um,
on the topic of the lettering,
yes,
I do also, one touch I really appreciated was the captions. They have the blood stains on them,
yeah.
the faded drops of blood. I just thought that was a really nice touch. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
Exactly. I mean, it's just so much of this is and people are going to be tired of hearing the word by the end of this episode, but stylized. It's just stylized in this really cool way. You've got all this watercolor and everything. You've got texture throughout this book that just isn't something that you see a lot of other places, especially in things like word balloons. So really like that. Excuse me. Now let's go into this character for just a second, and let's talk about what he's requesting here. Because I mean, just imagine for a second that either you're running a diner, you're waiting on customers at a diner, or you're the cop called into the diner for this dispute, and you've got this weird outsider. You don't know him. He doesn't look like anybody else in town, and he's asking you for whiskey and raw hamburger meat. Just such a shift, so weird. And and of course they bring up there that this is, basically this is a dry town. They don't serve alcohol, and the reason why is it would really kind of mess people up if they were drinking a lot during these 30 days of night and everything. So I like that they bring that element into it, based on the conversation that they're having here, or the dispute that they're having. But yeah, I would like to think that for a second. I mean, just imagine you've got to call the cops out to your diner because you've got this guy starting this big fight because he wants to eat raw, bloody hamburger meat. Just very strange.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think the customers and the bartender, well, I guess he's not a bartender. He's the diner owner or whatever. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're all handling it like very well because if I ran into this guy who like requesting raw meat of all things and like he's all pale and like scraggly looking and he kind of looks like Dream of the Endless like on a very very bad day.
Right.
It's just I would be freaked out. I'd be making excuses to head home.
Yeah, maybe close down the diner early. I don't know. Maybe everybody, look, you got like a few people at the diner. Maybe everybody bands together and gets them the hell out of there. I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't feel very comfortable around this dude at all, and I think that that's on purpose. So from
No,
there,
all that being said, though,
Mhm.
the reaction from the cops still feels a bit extreme. I mean, because at this point they don't know he's a vampire. They just
Yeah,
think he's an
sure.
asshole. They just think he's a
Mhm.
weird asshole. Like and pointing a gun at the guy's head. That still seems a bit of an escalation right there.
Yes.
It's kind of an action movie. Like it's an action movie scene. It's not like it's not a naturalistic scene.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think that, out in the real world, hopefully you wouldn't see, somebody at a diner, and a cop being called out and they're just, not getting up or whatever, and the cop pulls out their gun and points it at their head. Hopefully not something we would see. I mean, in today's world, who knows? But hopefully not. But yeah, I think that is also does a little bit of world building. It kind of illustrates like, you know, everybody's there for each other. Everybody's got each other's back. It's a tight knit community. Everybody knows one another. Whatever. Who the hell is this guy? Like we don't play here. Get up. Get out. It kind of
Yeah.
it makes sense in the story. But I'm with you. Yeah, that's a huge unwarranted escalation that maybe somebody will pay for. Maybe not. I'm not too sure. I guess we'll find out. Uh, but from there, yeah, he has them get up and wants to bring him into the station, for lack of a better term. I don't know what you call that exactly. I don't know if that kind of thing exists anymore. At least where I'm from, we don't have like a little sheriff station that has like holding cells in it. I don't know if that's still a thing. I don't know if that exists where you live, but
Oh, really? They don't exist anymore where you are?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we just have like a huge jailhouse. Like I don't, and then a prison. But
Well, isn't that what a jailhouse basically is, though? I mean, but just on a larger scale.
yeah, I
Isn't
guess so. Yeah,
because
I
yeah,
guess you're
that's
right.
I mean, isn't that the difference between jail and prison? Like jails where you hold someone overnight, and in prisons where like you actually put inmates.
Yeah, just something about the small town vibe where the cops are like basically sitting in front of the cell door there. Like it's just
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know. Like it's not
yeah.
something that
I
I've
think
seen, I guess.
that's obviously not something that happens in big cities. I mean,
Yeah.
like yeah,
Makes me
uh,
think of like the Andy Griffith show or something,
yeah,
where somebody's just sitting there and the prisoner, grabs a stick and then gets the keys while the guard's asleep or whatever and breaks out of the
yeah.
cell. So.
And at some point, sooner or later, they have a conversation. Like they have
Mhm.
some kind of like tense or interesting conversation.
Exactly. And that's always one thing, I think about. When I was a little bit younger, I thought maybe it'd be cool to be a cop, and then I thought to myself, I'm so bad with awkward interactions and stuff and conversation. I would hate to get called out to a scene and you were doing something wrong, excuse me, and then I've got to pick you up, and then on top of that, you've got to sit in the back of my car and I've got to drive 30 minutes with you sitting in the back seat. It's so awkward, like I couldn't do it. So
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's like being in an elevator with someone like times 10.
yeah, exactly. You're there. You're all alone, and something awkward just happened between the both of you that now you're taking this person to jail for. So, yeah, just sad and weird. But back to the story. Here's again, I keep wanting to say here's where it turns, here's where it gets interesting, but I feel like that happens every single scene. So this is pretty action heavy. We get over to the uh, Gus Lambert, who's controlling the communications center of town. Again, I don't know what I'm supposed to call that. I'm not too big into small town lingo, but an unknown group breaks in and then damages the equipment, and then they kill Gus there. So uh,
Mhm.
pretty intense scene, and this is where we're really first solidifying that. that those vampires or unnamed group of people who are willing to kill whoever and break all the communication are there. So um, again, takes that big turn. It's almost like every time something happens in this book, I'm like, okay, this is crazy. Like somebody's got to deal with this, and then they don't. They're like, nope, something else crazy is about to happen now too. So just this is like action packed. This is heavy. What did you think about this scene? Because this one, I downplayed the hell out of it. I didn't go into all of it or anything. Just kind of summarized it there. But this is
I
where we really see these vampires attack.
Yeah, I really like the captions that we have to
Hmm.
give us a glimpse of who Gus is.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
feel this is a technique that like comics can do so well, like where they just like put in a few captions there to give a sense of who this person is. Because you can do it in parallel with them actually doing things. It doesn't have to be like a huge info dump like it would in a novel,
Hmm.
because it can run parallel to actually seeing them do things, which is what is happening here. So it's
Yeah.
just such an effective technique that I kind of wish more writers would utilize.
Yeah, it is really cool. It's really, uh, again, like you're not having that big exposition dump. You're having like a little like narrative, uh, story there. Like it just kind of tells you what's going on, catches you up really quick, and you're good to go. You're in the scene. I want to talk about some of the art here because now we get to see some of the art of the vampires, and again, they're very stylized dialogue. They're very stylized word balloons as well. There's a different font going on there, different handwriting. It's not the same as the guy from the diner. That's unhinged and that's crazy. But this is just different from our human.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't even notice that until you mentioned it. But yeah, that is interesting. That is definitely interesting because it indicates that. And this is like one of those interesting things they can do, where like storytelling via lettering,
Yep.
where because it tells us that there is some sort of big difference between them, like that the guy in jail is not just another one of these people, that he's distinct in some way.
Yes, and I'll get more into that in a little bit too because that's very interesting. Um, One of the things that I want to point out about this scene in particular, in the artwork and everything, is I for one, I'm like a huge fan, and obviously this book was going to have it in there, and it's probably had it in there up to this point. I'm just really, kind of showcasing it now, but I love a snowy scene. I love whenever there's snow passing by, in frame of somebody's face or whatever. That's utilized really really well here. The smoke of this vampire. We've got the one vampire that's smoking a cigarette in the scene, and he lights a cigarette. And it's kind of got that same vibe that the blood does, like with this lighter there and the smoke coming off of it and everything, and the smoke pouring out of his nostrils and the side of his mouth. Just done so well, just so cool, just something so different that I'm not used to seeing in comics.
Yeah. The use of red in those last two panels, it's
Oh
almost
yeah.
like fluorescent. It's just like it's it's almost like a fireball or something. And it just
Hmm.
boom. He like, I assume he's scratching the guy or like slashing him or something. But it looks like an explosion almost.
Right? Like it's terrifying. And
Mhm.
you know, for them to be able to pull that off through this book is really really cool. I think a lot of times, I'm gonna be honest. Like I read a lot of comics. I read a lot of horror comics. I love comics and I love horror, so I'm naturally gonna read all that stuff. I I love that those things are like creepy and there's all of that, but they're not usually very scary. It takes a lot to make a comic book scary, in my opinion. I read the Ice Cream Men books and all of that, Creep Show anthology books and everything. They're cool. They introduce like a lot of cool story elements and sci-fi elements, maybe a little bit of gore or whatever. But it's hard to like really scare somebody through a comic. I think that they do a really good job making these vampires scary. I
Let
won't
me
lie
let
about
me
that.
ask you,
Mhm.
like, how do you find comics compare like to other media, like in terms of like horror stories that are scary? Because like, yeah, so like for example, would you say that prose tends to be scarier or?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that like a horror novelization or something, uh, that kind of thing, can be a little bit scarier to me. I think that it's hard whenever you're dealing with like such a visual medium, trying to make that scary. Uh, I can definitely, movies do a lot for me because I think that the sound does a lot. And then the written word does a lot. It's hard in pictures for me. I don't know, unless it's like super, super creepy and something just comes out of nowhere, or whatever. It's hard to do like a jump scare or anything in a comic as well. But yeah, how about you? Do you ever, are there any comics you can think of that are really scary, or what scares you?
I'm not a big horror person, but yeah, I do agree that, in general, it's very hard for comics to scare me. But then I feel the same way about prose. Like, I feel like, movies and TV, they have the advantage where, like, they control the pacing.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. And because they control the pacing, you're not in control of the pacing. Like, you can't, I mean, I guess you could press pause, but still, at the end of the day, you're not in control of how fast it happens or when stuff happens. And that lends itself so much to fear. And I think like if with prose and with comics where you are so much in control of the experience, it cannot hit the same way. Uh, but conversely, I feel like comics are very, very good at maybe not being scary, but being creepy. They're very good at giving the creepy vibe because they can do so much with art and with shadow and with shading and texture and all that stuff that 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 can invoke a certain mood or certain atmosphere, or certain ambiance.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can take a vibe, and I think that that's a lot of what this book is gonna, what we can say about this book. It's a vibe. There's definitely, a lot of world building here. There's a lot of, the art is so stylized. Again, I keep using the same word over and over again to describe it, but I don't know how else to describe this to you. It's very abstract, very stylized, very sketchy. It's got a lot going on. But it's the atmosphere around it. I may not technically be scared, but
You're
I have to
unsettled.
tell you, yeah, if I was on a bus, on a train, on a plane to go to Alaska, for the winter or something, and I was reading this, yeah, I'd be scared shitless. I mean, I'd be terrified. I'd be like, turn around, I'm not going. So I'm here in sunny Florida, so I don't have to worry too much about this particular story. But given a different context, this could scare the hell out of me. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely disturbing. Whether or not it's scary, it's definitely unsettling and disturbing.
Very
But again,
now.
Ben Templesmith's art, I feel like, again, this is one of those great things about comics, like with an artist like Templesmith, like he can make anything feel unsettling, like he can make
Very.
like, a 9-year-old girl walking down the street, like just feel unsettling somehow.
Yeah, very. And I want to ask you, does this, we talked a little bit off air before this, does this make you reconsider your trip to Alaska that you were going to take this winter?
Uh,
You're still going.
no, not especially because, well, here's the thing. I mean, I feel like I'm already terrified by half the things in the world, So,
You and me both, right?
like if it hasn't gotten to me already, like at this point, nothing new will. Like everything that terrifies me already terrifies me, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderfully said. So yeah, we're going back over to the jail in the book here, and Evan and Stella are keeping watch of the man from the diner from before, and he's like antagonizing them. He's really, kind of hitting hard. He's talking, he's saying things that, to piss Evan off, of course, and he's succeeding, and Evan even uh lets Stella know that. and and then again, just when every time I turn around in this book, something big happens. Uh, so then the guy, rips open the bars, or bends open the bars, and walks through. And the couple shoots him, Evan first, and then Stella comes in behind him and takes a shot as well because, surprise, he didn't go down very easy. So So what are our thoughts here now that we don't know much about this guy? We're seeing, and through all of that, again, we're seeing all of this really cool written dialogue and everything from this character. But what were your thoughts whenever they kind of shot him through the head there?
I kind of expected him to get back up
Yeah.
because that's what happens in these stories, right?
Mhm.
And for all I know, that'll happen, in the next issue. But I was expecting that beat that they shot him and he'd get back up and they go, that's impossible. Um, but no, it went in a less predictable direction. Good for them.
Yeah, it really did, and yeah, there are reasons for that. And like I said, this is only a 3-part mini, so I'm not going to spoil anything. Definitely go check out those other 2 issues. But yeah, I'd love to talk about that, at another time after you've read those, maybe. So the book is really starting to wrap up here, and it. But look, before I get into that, we go back over to the communication center, and right? Can I call it that? Is there another name? Is there something I'm missing? Would you call it a communication center?
Um, I think there's probably a better word that's like on the tip of both of our tongues. We're just
Right?
not getting there.
Yeah, I don't think communication center is it, but that's all right. I sound like an idiot half the time anyway, so I'll take it. But yeah, we get back over there, and now here's again where it kind of just it really gets a little terrifying visually here, because we've got Gus's head on a stake, right there in front of the communication center, and that is terrifying. And our cop couple has to walk up to that and see that, and man, just imagine walking up to that scene. All the shit you've dealt with all night, that's been going on. Now you walk up to this destroyed, completely decimated communication center, and Gus, your beloved townsfolk friend's head is on the stick there in front of it. Terrible.
Yeah, I think the fact that he throws up, oh, that she throws up, I guess,
Mhm.
kind of says it all. That's
Yeah.
that's 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 the whole thing in a nutshell. Like, oh God, yeah, you've had a terrible day, and now at the end of it, you get it just suddenly takes a turn towards the very, very morbid and horrifying. Like before, it was just a weird day. I mean, well, they already shot the guy, so I guess it's already kind of taken a turn. But now it's gone even further. I think this is the one moment where they realize, like they might actually die. I think up until before that, I don't think that was a real possibility. But I think once you see a dismembered person, you realize, the shit has hit the fan.
Yeah, exactly. And look, there's been a lot going on throughout the day, very stressful. And of course, on top of that, just that normal day, if nothing was going on, basically the town shutting down, you're getting in the 30 days of night, already pretty stressful, probably, for the cops and everything, anyways. Um, but you're just adding and adding and adding. And like I said, now you really have hit that point of no return. One of your beloved townspeople is dead. So that's pretty terrifying. And then we've got to follow, excuse me, we have to follow Eben and Stella as they ride along in the car here, and try to make it back to the station, try to make it back into town and make sure everybody else is okay. That's what they're planning on doing. And then, like I've said a million times, I'm a broken record on this. I say stylized every 5 seconds, and I say every time something happens, it adds more and more. But it happens again. They're riding in the car, they're going back into town, and Stella sees something. She's like, something's happening over there. And what happens then? They get out of the car to go check it out, and Evan grabs his binoculars and zooms in, and yeah, that final scene. Wow. Uh, we
Earlier I
see.
was talking about how the first page is very effective, even though it's decompressed and not much happens. It's very effective.
Yep.
I feel part of that is because it sort of parallels this scene. The
Yes.
slow reveal of the town and parallels the slow reveal of the vampire horde, and so it's a similar scene, but now like it's taken on a completely different color. So I think that the bookending it that way with those two things, I think that's very effective.
Yeah, I completely agree. A great way to end this book. And At this point, I would like to say this though. We do have the luxury, and again, I'm going to say it again. I I don't know if in 2002 this was marketed as a vampire book or not. I don't know if the solicit and previews or whatever was like a new hit new vampire series from Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith. I don't know if they said that, but it still hasn't been explicitly said that anybody's a vampire here. The term vampire hasn't come up. Uh, we really haven't seen anybody do any vampire. Well, yes, we did have the kind of vampire attack on Gus, but uh, you know, still, I guess it could be. You could write it off as a zombie attack if you didn't know. I think at that point, maybe I don't know. They don't look like too undead. They don't have like really the gray like rotting skin or anything, but I don't know. I think still at this point, if you didn't know, it still could be something else. It still isn't explicitly vampires.
Yeah, but I do think that I think most readers would at least be suspecting vampires at this point.
Mhm.
Like at this point, it's either vampires or vampires are a red herring,
Yeah.
one or the other.
Now, tell me, do you have a digital copy in front of you? You got a paper copy or?
Yeah, I'm reading it on Hoopla. Actually, so
Okay.
here's the thing.
Mhm.
Mine's actually, I don't want to sidetrack you from your point. I
No,
have
you're
sold
fine.
it.
You're fine. Yeah.
But so okay, well, mine's digital. Mine's on Hoopla, and
Mhm.
I didn't find the single issues on Hoopla. They might be there. I just didn't find them. But I borrowed the trade paperback off of Hoopla,
Oh,
and
cool.
one thing you'll notice about it is that there are no breaks between the issues. They just treat all three issues as one big story. So you don't even know where one issue ends and another begins. Uh, and
That's
it
pretty
feels like
cool.
it's written towards that because like this
Yeah.
last page, it does not read like the last page of a comic. It
Right.
reads like
Yeah.
the middle page of a story. Like if it was the last page, you might end on the shot of the vampires,
Hmm.
or you
Instead of
might
those two panels. Yeah.
yeah, or you might even end on like on her saying Evan, like and him just like staring. But you wouldn't end on like that third panel
Hmm.
where he tells her to get in the car because that's kind of dialing it down a notch from where it was in the previous panels.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, I think the only indication there is that to be continued in that panel. Now, what I was going to ask you is, that big reveal. We have the close up of the vampires there. If you can, you've got all the way on your left. You have a female vampire with dark hair, and then you've got next to her a male vampire, kind of spiky hair and his mouth open. There's another vampire kind of in the distance behind them with blonde hair. If you can zoom in on her a little bit.
Um, the one in between them?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Now, is it just me or is that Gwen Stefani from No Doubt? Because I swear to God, it's got to be, right?
To be honest, I don't see it.
No. Wow. Okay. Okay.
I honestly don't see it. Now, I do feel that the guy on the right, he
Mhm.
does kind of look like, like David Tennant if he was beaten by an ugly stick.
Yeah.
But I think
Well.
that's mainly the hair.
Yeah, they're very interesting, and this is I like this panel a lot because I think to break this one down. Um, we talked before, or at least I did. I gave my opinion that I wasn't in love with every single face that Ben Templesmith did in this book. I really really love his art style, but I think once you zoom in on the faces and stuff, sometimes the lack of detail or the harshness of the face or whatever doesn't do it for me. This is perfect. I love the way these faces look. They look wonderful. They look fully rendered. Like they look really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Now that
Really interesting.
you've drawn my attention to the lady in the background, like she looks awesome. Like
Right?
she
She
looks
looks
fun.
badass.
Yeah, like I'd be perfectly happy if like the next issue like she suddenly like you know took the stage because she looks yeah, again like you said she looks like she's gonna kick some ass.
Yeah, she's definitely there to start some shit. Which is I guess what you want in this book. Really cool though. But yeah, that's where it leaves us. Excuse me. That's where this first issue wraps, and we've already hit the hour mark, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much longer, but give me your thoughts. Like, what did you think about this? I'll tell you mine, of course. If you want me to go first, I can. Whatever. But just give me your impressions of the book.
Well, again, I'm not a big horror reader, so
Hmm.
keep that in mind. I'm not a big fan of the genre, but I feel that this story avoids the pitfall of a lot of the genres. What I find like unsatisfying about a lot of horror stories, and this I know this is absolutely a generalization because I know there are lots that don't fit what I'm about to describe. But like but there's a certain kind of horror story where like so much of the time is spent on the characters being terrified and
Hmm.
running
Yeah.
around scared. Like for example, like just 2 months ago, I read a graphic novel where that's pretty much what happened. I'm not gonna say what it was because I don't want to like call out someone for no reason. But yeah, it was just like so much of the story, like 75% or 50% of the story was just the characters, being terrified and running from scary things and going, "Oh my God, what's happening?" And I just feel like that doesn't work for me because like in a weird counterintuitive way, like when people are scared, that's when they're least interesting because then their personality gets pared down, it all becomes flight or flight, and people doing that, they all act the same way basically, one person running scared from a monster is exactly the same as another person running scared from a monster, and one person shouting "Oh my God" is exactly the same as someone else shouting "Oh my God." So like when that happens, you lose a sense of who these people as characters. So like I feel like the best horror stories, like they indulge in that sort of thing very sparingly. They know to keep that sort of thing like sparse so that when it does hit, it is effective. And so I appreciate that, there isn't any of people running around being scared here. There's not much terror here yet. I mean, even if the Gus scene, it's not him. It's not like 2 pages of him running from the vampires. It's him confronting them and it's getting killed at the last moments. And I think all that works because it makes these characters feel more distinct. They feel like people now instead of as a sort of like scared person template.
Yeah. Look, I can completely agree with that because I think that there's a fine line, especially with horror. Um, even with action, sci-fi, any basic story, element. There's a lot of archetypes. There's a lot of, you know, you have to decide in your story if there's going to be archetypes. I mean, you're writing a horror story. There's most likely going to be some archetypes in there. Are you going to play to that? Are you going to play into that? Are you going to do something different with it? Are you going to shy away from it? Like, what are your plans with this? And I think that it would be very easy in someone else's hands. I think of myself. If I tried to write this story, it would be hard not to make Evan this archetype that I want to flesh out. I like that Steve doesn't do that. Yeah, he's kind of like the hardened badass cop in town, whatever. We don't have to go into much of his backstory. We don't go into anything. We don't need to know that he's this way because his mom died when he was 15. Like none of that matters. They don't do that. We're dropped straight into the story. We're dropped straight into uh, Eben and Stella's development. We don't have to know about their relationship before they were high school sweethearts. Blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. They don't go over that. But what matters is they're both cops. They live in Barrow, Alaska. Vampires have figured out that they can, feast for 30 days there because the sun doesn't come out. End of story. Like it's so straightforward and to the point. And the main thing that happens here is what I talked about before is I feel like Steve is really, really trusting Ben with this story instead. He's like, here is my basic outline, go. And I don't know for a fact that that's what happened, but that's what I read on the page.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
it,
with no disrespect towards Steve Niles, I think it's safe to say that Templesmith is absolutely the star of this show.
yeah, he's definitely carrying the book. But it is a cool idea, and I think that it takes both. I think that again, if we had this very, very fleshed out world, we had to explore all points of it and blah blah blah. That it wouldn't work with somebody like Templesmith on the art. He's going to do that world building himself, through the abstractness of what he's got going on and everything. And I, yeah, I think that it works so well because these two work well together, and because it's a unique idea, but it's not super fleshed out. It's very straightforward. Here's what it is, done. And you can kind of see that. I don't know if you read ahead at all, but it's just being a 3-part mini, and they tell the full story. It's completely contained in those 3 parts. Really cool. A really cool way to do it. Comics are kind of getting back to that right now. You're getting a lot of 4-part, 5-part minis and stuff like that. Everybody's not aiming for an ongoing all the time anymore. But yeah, it's a very interesting way to tell a story, especially a story of this magnitude, where it's like you don't know anything about this, and here you drop straight in. So I would say, personally, I'd say it was a success. Now, I suggested this book. I threw it out there on the Discord, and I was like, hey, if anybody wants to cover it, and thank God you were like, yeah, man. I love horror. I didn't know anything about this book, like going in, just like you. Like we knew, in passing, it was like a vampire thing, whatever. So it's not like, I'm like, hey, this is one of my favorite books that I've read a million times. I'm going to pick it, and then we're going to go over it. So with that being said, I feel pretty good about saying I think this was a success, and I have already read ahead, but if I hadn't, I would be very interested in reading issue number 2. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I probably won't read further, but that's not an indictment of the book. It's just like I have like so little free time. Like I pretty much don't read anything unless like I love it,
Yep.
And this does not meet the level of love, but then very few things do.
Yeah, a fun comic to break down nonetheless. Definitely a lot of talking points in this. If you're looking for something, to really like kind of pique your interest, and you may, really come out of it satisfied like I was, or you may be more on the, I don't absolutely love this, so I'm not going to continue on, but definitely, something to check out and see where you land on that. Always fun to do a throwback from 22 years ago at this point. Jesus Christ, it's the old comic, man. Yeah, this is golden age at this point. So
Yeah, it's funny. It doesn't read. I feel like comics, like I think like 1990s, maybe mid 90s or early 90s, the cutoff point where like you read a comic from before then, and it feels that way. It feels like this was written in a different age, where everything past that, like late 90s and beyond, I feel there you can tell it's written in the past because of things like how the cell phones are portrayed, but like stylistically, it's of a piece of what's being put out today.
Right? Yeah, it's nice how it's they do timestamp it, but it still feels a little ambiguous. So yeah, cool, fun, weird, stylized story, some crazy art. Check it out if that's what you're into. I think that will about do it. We should wrap this thing up. We're at an hour and 10. But make sure that you guys stick around in the episode. We're going to attach a Jeremy Holt interview to this. Jeremy Holt, of course, working for Marvel right now, doing the Venom What If series that's about to drop in local comic book shops. So you guys are absolutely going to want to check out that interview. But yeah, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking to me about this book tonight. Now you got to pick the next one.
I was absolutely delighted to do this. It was very interesting because, again, like I said, it's so interesting going into something like in a vacuum, like having no idea what's about and no idea where it's going, and just basing your thoughts, like sort of like analyzing your reaction to just that one first issue without any outside knowledge. I think that's just fascinating in its own way. And this is something that I probably wouldn't normally pick up because, again, I'm not a big horror person, and so it's always nice to just like to partake of things outside your comfort zone, outside of your group. That's what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Well, hey, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time.